All right, so I don't have a gavel like Sue, but let's get started. Call this thing to order. Welcome everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Yeah, first meeting here, and got Sam and got everybody here today. So let's get going. So 105 pages of stuff. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about and go through, but it's all so important to what we're all about. So let's get going here. So elementary attendance boundaries, I looked through here quite a bit, so Mike, I guess that's your...
Yeah, this is our third kind of discussion with this committee on this group. So I will say...
Hold on just a minute.
Yes.
I want to do a real quick setup. What we're going to do is we're going to give y'all a lot of information that you can build upon. So we've got Mike, we've got Jennifer, we've got Jared. So there's a lot of people that have, and they all have time limits. So they're going to cram a whole lot of information into you very, very quickly, and they're not going to go through every page in here.
Okay.
But keep your packets, because you may need that information later, because there's a lot of this that I did not know, and it's really good information.
So can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
So when I'm looking through all of this stuff, I noticed that all the stuff from the last bond issue leading up, that whole strategic plan, is that just something to show us example, just kind of how that all got put together?
And there were some comments that y'all had last time that I thought were really pertinent to the discussions you're having now about capacity, how often you need facilities, that kind of stuff. So I was going to highlight, I actually printed just a small packet with select sheets in the back for y'all to review.
We talked and we said, do this one, don't do this one, do this one, don't do this one. But you still need that information in some form. So like I said, just kind of put this in a binder in your homes or someplace, because it is pieces that, where's Jeff at? Am I missing Jeff?
Yes, Jeff is gone. Where's Jeff?
I don't know. There were so many people. I missed Jeff.
And
Hopefully
he
he's
talked about being here.
Yeah, hopefully he's on the way. But keep it someplace, because you will probably refer back to, I know that you'll be referring back to this.
He's going to be 3 or 4 minutes late.
Okay. Many times. So with that, again, you're going to get a lot of information, and then we're going to start talking about what to do with that information. This meeting is kind of in 2 pieces. Michael.
So I'm gonna jump straight to page 12 on my information. What we did is the conclusion of the last meeting, we spoke about that we felt like before we just made wholesale commitments to it's time to build now, or those types of things, or it's time to change attendance boundaries again, we wanted to take a couple, and it took us about a month. We wanted to go through all the transfer data. We wanted to talk with HR and other staffs and kind of see what some other alternatives we would have. So we compiled all of our intra and intra-district transfer data. We met 2 or 3 times with HR and kind of as an administrative team, and these are kind of the conclusions we came up with as a result of that process. We're concerned that we have 277 approved intra-district transfers. The sustainability of that's problematic for campus capacity. So, and what we consider a discretionary transfer is a transfer where the parent requested a certain campus, they lived in one zone and requested a second zone. They had been identified as a returning student, so once they had a history at that campus, they were allowed to remain at that campus even though they were out of zone. And the third is that we had siblings of these parent choice and returning students. So of our intra-district elementary transfers, over half, 53%, were discretionary transfers. And we don't feel like that's not sustainable as fast as we're growing and the campus capacity concerns we've had. We would like to get out of that business of having that many discretionary transfers. Several campuses are over 15% of their total population is transfers, with the highest being Sparta at 28%. And the breakdown data on that is within the packet up to page 12.
But we knew that because of the location of the 3 campuses, and a big part of those are teachers.
Part of those, but not as many as we thought.
About half, right.
A little less than half. Yeah. But it's still a 28% with room for capacity growth. So we feel like Sparta is an area where, as we get a little better grip on transfers, that we're going to have a good hub there at Sparta where we'll have some space to send kids if we need to. Out-of-district transfers need to be evaluated. We obviously will intend to be very respectful of that 4% cap. We also don't feel like we will get close to that 4% cap again this year. Just looking at our returners and the kind of the expected or normal growth that we have in that program. Special programs, we did an evaluation of our special programs to determine if there were any that could potentially be moved to a campus of lower capacity to free up rooms at our highest capacity campuses. And the conclusion of that study was we don't really wish to move any or disrupt any special programs at this time. We have large campuses that support a large number of special programs, and we want to continue to keep those special programs at those campuses. Enrollment projections, what we found in this study, enrollment projections are more accurate. At first, when we got to some of the issues we had in the fall, our expectation was that maybe the projections were off, but we didn't find that to be true. What we did find, though, is we are growing so fast that there was very little room for error in staffing. So when you plan for 4 sections and you plan on all those sections to have 21 kids, and then all of a sudden 4 new families move in, and now you've got 4 sections of 23 kids all of a sudden, or 23 sections of 23 kids. So we're very tight in our staffing, and we've had very little room for error. We feel like we need to phase out the existing returning student transfers, meaning not just eliminate those altogether, but as we graduate those kids onto middle school, that we don't approve as many that are coming in at the K-3 level. So, over time, we will not have that 53% of our population, transfer population, being these discretionary transfers. And we do that by following our board policy, which is something that in the recommendations we'll go through. We believe that we can keep the 2019 boundaries intact for at least the foreseeable future until we get a long-range strategic plan on new facilities. We believe that the ability by board policy to close campuses is going to give us some immediate relief on our highest growth rate campuses. And then we think that we kind of decided to look at our elementaries in the quadrants, and we wanted to make sure that as we close campuses, and we don't want to go overboard on closing campuses, and I'll go through the recommendations in a second, but if you look on page 13, we wanted to make sure that as we kind of looked at our elementary campuses, we thought it made sense to divide the district into 4 quadrants. And we wanted to make sure that we had available room in each quadrant for overcrowding needs. In other words, we would never want a system where Chisholm Trail and Sparta are closed and we're having to send kids across town for overcrowding purposes. So we felt like that we kind of came up with a plan in our recommendations that are going to meet this need where community-wise and city-wise, we're going to have schools that are going to be open schools that are going to have room for growth and capacity room in each quadrant. So on page 14, these are kind of the recommendations that we want to make in regards to immediate relief of capacity concerns at the elementary schools. Number 1 is we need to be very diligent about revoking and non-renewing transfer students who don't comply with our policy. We have a board policy. That policy is crystal clear on what the expectations are for transfer students, and we need to make sure that we hold those transfer students accountable, that they follow what our policy says and what they agreed to by signing the transfer form. They agreed they would have great attendance. They agreed they would not have behavior issues. And if they have some of those issues, then we need to look at sending those kids back to the campus where they're zoned to attend. We need a more strict application of transfer criteria for new transfer applications, and we fully intend, just as we did with the secondary schools, and I think people were appreciative of that. We want to do the same with our elementary schools. We want to follow policy. We only would like to honor returning requests for students with a 3-year history at that campus, meaning a kindergarten student would not necessarily qualify as a returning student. However, a student that's been at that campus for 3 years, we would like to honor that history and let that transfer play out as long as they meet all the other criteria that's established in board policy. Also with sibling requests, our desire would not be to split up families. So if we have students that are on transfer, either as a discretionary or in a special population, we would continue to honor those sibling requests as long as the family as long as the family makes those and as long as they meet the criteria. We feel like we need to add staff or capacity where we have capacity needs and available space, and that's going to be on whenever we get to the next line 6. So kind of the way that works is add 2 portable buildings at Chisholm Trail. That would give us 4 sections And we feel like 4 sections at Chisholm Trail right now would get us at least 2 years capacity, maybe more. We want to close campuses of Chisholm Trail, Lakewood Elementary, and Leon Heights. Chisholm Trail, even adding the 4 classes, is still going to be a capacity concern because of the growth of Three Creeks. Leon Heights is at near capacity and no room for, we do not have room to add sections at Leon Heights. Lakewood is near capacity and we have no available rooms to add capacity at Lakewood. So we can't add teachers at Lakewood, we don't have room. But we do have room at High Point, and we will have room at Tarver by adding staff. We will have room at Pirtle by adding staff, and we'll have room at Charter Oak because it's not full yet. So we feel like that will solve the Lakewood issue on the north side, and we feel like Sparta can handle any overflow if we do have some from Chisholm Trail. But the addition of four sections and 2 portables at that point should allow us not to have to move kids from Chisholm Trail at this time either. And then add for our normal growth and scheduled growth at all the other campuses. And then that's along with a long-term strategic plan for the growth of our elementary population. And then on page 15, this will not need to be detailed. This is just the information for board policy on our the policy that we have for revocation. So these would be the reasons that we would revoke a transfer student. And this is the policy. It's on the application form. The parents are aware of it when they sign up. Closed campuses we've addressed. We would recommend at this time Chisholm Trail, Lakewood, and Leon Heights, and with the right to close campuses further for new transfers if we get to a point later this spring where it looks like that's a need. Right now we think we can meet everyone's needs, not have a substantial amount of class waivers that we'd have to submit for over capacity, for over section counts, and we also feel like we probably would not need to move students for overcrowding transfers with closing these 3 campuses. And on to page 16, this is our recommendations for our intra-district transfers. Like you said, we've already finished 6th through 12th grade. Those were completed in the fall. And I just covered for the K through 5 transfers is follow board policy on all new requests, honor students that have been at the campus for 3 or more years, allow them to stay at the current campus if they're a returning 5th grader. So if they were there as a 4th grader or below, we don't want to have a kid that was at one campus as 4th grade and then move him to another campus as a 5th grader and then have him 3 campuses in 3 years. We think we can handle 5th grade capacity without moving those kids, even if they don't have 3 years experience or 3 years at the campus. And then also the sibling transfer. And then so the same kind of thing is for the intra-district transfers as well. If they don't have 3 years or more history at that campus, then we're going to send them to the campus closest to their home address. And so I went really fast, and I know we have a lot to cover.
I didn't have to flag or twitch or anything.
Sometimes the coach comes out, and I want to do my pep talk and stuff. This is what we feel like the data has led us to the best plan possible. We don't want to change attendance boundaries. We know that there will be some construction at some point, but this will hold that off until we really know what that needs to be. And by staffing and by tightening down on transfers and closing campuses, we think the data will show us next year that we made some progress in not addressing these capacity concerns.
And then again, if the 2 portables, you've heard about that, you've heard that in the week as well. So those will be coming in. Those will be leases. And so whenever the district is ready to get rid of those, you don't have to keep them at that point in time, because I know the goal is to not have any. And so this is a short-term solution, and they'll be gone.
Okay.
Mike, I got a huge compliment on the way you guys handled transfers the other day. Somebody from the community was like, it's beautiful. Y'all are doing such a good job on it. They always say y'all, because they don't know who it is. It wasn't exactly me, but thank you. I'll pass that along.
Thank you.
So you'll have to coach me through this. When we get to the next meeting, will this be an agenda item and we'll make a motion to approve these recommendations? How do we do that?
Yeah,
Do we need
I
to
don't
do
think
that?
so, because these are leases. I mean,
Okay.
you're not contracting for anything, you're not purchasing anything.
No, I'm talking about this.
Oh, the plan?
inter-transfer,
No,
the
but no.
transfer policy.
No, the transfer policy went through policy committee, so they approved all that. You're right, they took all
We're
that.
policy already.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're
So
good.
the setup is already there.
Good.
But he did outline criteria that we can follow, so it's not subjective and it's more, visible for parents to truly understand why we're making
Well,
those decisions.
I mean, I called Mike yesterday because I had a parent call about transfer. I've had a lot of people approach me about this, and I feel so comfortable with the policy, and and these are people that are friends of mine, and I say, look, there is no exception. This is it. This is the policy. This is why we have to have it. So to me, what's that old saying, the best neighbors have the best fences? Y'all built some really good fences, and I think it's working. I mean, you can't have a gray area in all this, especially when you're talking about secondary kids and UIL and stuff like that. I think you guys are doing a great job.
I do wanna just add, in case you all would ever receive a question, we did discuss the need to close Chisholm, even though we are adding a portable in 4 classrooms. You would think, oh, we're adding more space, but just to absorb the growth in the south.
Three Creeks is gonna make that,
I just
we're gonna
want
need
you all
that
to
space to
know
accommodate 3 Creeks.
We discussed
But
that, and
kind of the other part on space was intertwined with technology, because right now we have computer labs in all the elementary campuses.
Mhm.
Deanna visited with the elementary principals, and over time, those will be going away, and we will recapture those spaces for classroom space. And we'll go to more of a cart model. Several reasons for that. One is that the online testing with the state, you're probably going to need to have more of a mobile setting for classrooms. The second one is a lot of times our curriculum and what's being taught in computer labs they just don't align because you have different people doing them. And then we need the space. So again, technology placement comes in that space too.
And we did look at the district programs. There are a few special programs that are housed at Chisholm, and could we move those to avoid the purchase of a portable? And we can't, because then the only place to move those programs would be to the north, and those children are living in the south, and so
It was in the best interest.
it was not in the best interest. So we did look at that as well.
All right, so that's your first layup. You good?
Yep.
All right, Jared.
Okay. Want to jump into the facilities and land?
Yep, strategic planning for facilities and land.
Might be a little
Yeah,
bit.
a little simpler. So, on the strategic planning for facilities and land, you wanna cover the old bond stuff first, or you wanna go through that?
A
So,
little updated.
yep, at the very back of the packet I just handed out for simplicity, I've cut this down to 4 slides, that are kind of the most pertinent.
All right, thank you.
But ultimately, what I wanted to remind kind of everybody of is when Charter Oak was being discussed, there was a lot of evaluation about where Charter Oak would go. It wasn't, not Charter Oak at the time, but ultimately what parcel of land. And I start with the very back slide, and this was the rubric that was created out of that process that ultimately identified that the Poison Oak Road side was the optimum location for it to go. And that was based on, how it impacted demographics, basically where the growth was within the community, all the way to on-site, off-site conditions, those kind of things. All of these properties are good properties for elementary schools, but ultimately this was the framework to help the decision to get to Charter Oak. Paired with that, and you'll see on the 2 previous sheets on that one, are some sample graphic layouts. And there were 2 properties that I know that y'all were discussing in particular. The top one up here is the 2nd Street property. And so the things that I'll point out there is this, on the right side of the diagram, you'll see is the ag barn. And that is, I know where an easement is being considered, so you can kind of see that. The red area in the middle is the existing electrical easement. And then you'll see that we've shown 2 concepts. The one on the left is the Charter Oak prototype pulled forward, and the one on the bottom is a 2-story concept pulled forward on there. So there's still buildable land, you can still get to it. And it gets away from the topography of the edge, but it is still a viable elementary school site from there. And then the second one there at the bottom is Shanklin Road. Just to give a perspective that is, I believe it's 99 acres in there. And so that would be what an elementary school looks like. The schools are the same size between the 2 sheets, so don't let the scale confuse the 2. One smaller than the other. It's huge from there.
Yep.
So definitely could be a possibility on that.
Jared, I want to take you back to the back page and these little circles real quickly. Northgate, we talked about quadrants earlier. Northgate's in the northeast quadrant. 2nd Avenue's in your southwest quadrant. Covered Branch is in your southeast quadrant. The sheet. And Shanklin Road is just south. It kind of straddles the line between southeast and southwest. So when you start looking at those quadrants and where you expand and grow, then you can kind of see how that aligns. Excuse me.
Okay. So that was what we wanted to remind you is really for the facilities planning and land. And so then as you go back, if we're ready to move on to item C, you want to jump to that?
I've just got one question.
Absolutely.
I would like to see at some point the two-story model put onto the property at Southwest Elementary.
Okay.
On that back, that southeast
Edge.
corner, there's a big space back there. You know, I'd like to see that at some point. And then maybe even, you know, once we kind of get to a certain point, seeing what the rubric would be, you know, see how that would score out. It was interesting when I was looking through here that that north gate was the lowest by far, you know, and it's, you know, that land swap and the whole deal, but it was interesting to see how low that was compared to the others. Even the Second Avenue, and I would have thought, you know, having to do it up on top of that hill and everything.
Well, and it's the multiple factors, so at the time, and this is, if you wanna go to page 9, it's starting to get into that discussion, which is item C,
Okay.
is fundamentally that property, and you can really see it in this top diagram, is a flag lot. And what that basically means is this top little anchor is the only access to the property currently. So when we were reviewing it, there was not a development being actively planned.
Right.
There were not utilities, there was not road access, so that made its score actually low, is that we were gonna have to bring all those things to the property. So this rubric here at the back is really a snapshot in time, and yes, it would update now if there's development, those kind of things.
And that changes things, you know, and Jared and I visited, I didn't think about that, and we had such a good conversation, thank you so much. But, when this was first developed and we've heard about in our community, you know, well, that's the only way that we could do it. Well, at that point in time, that was true because it was undeveloped. That's not true anymore. Things have changed. So just bear that in mind as we go through this conversation.
Yep. So then Northgate, which is item C on your agenda, is the existing property is 14.5 acres. When we talk about elementary school properties, generally we talk 15 to 20 acres is what you want to have, is the target. That's enough to build the building, get parking, have outside access. As we start talking now, that'll be stormwater detention and management, all the things that have to go on the property, as well as future expansion. You'll see how that plays out as we get to Chisholm Trail, you know, as far as potential expansion. So the question became for us is the area in pink at the top right, the developer has requested also to purchase that property, and then they would donate the little sliver on the bottom right shown in green at the 0.139 acres. Ultimately, if that occurred, you would be looking at a site that is 13.6 acres net from there. So it's a little bit lower than the ideal. A lot of that plays into that is the shape of the building, 2-story. We kind of talked about that last time. And so the following pages represent, or the following diagrams represent what different prototypes look like on that. And so this very bottom right diagram on the same page represents basically pulling Charter Oak forward as is. Site layout, adjacencies, access, and then you'll see that green square, and I know that that's in essence what would flex in this prototype. That would be where your playground area is and your play space is in that location. And we've tried to maintain the same proportions and access. You'll notice that we are coming off of North Pea Ridge Road, but we could potentially have access off of the adjacent properties as well.
And Jared, the detention pond fits in these scenarios?
So we would need to fit that in very similar to Charter Oak of putting those in place. And I think, as I recall, as I was going through this, I couldn't remember the board decision about participating in the off-site detention. I think the decision was no, that you did not want to participate in that. So it would have to occur locally. I'd have to go back and review that.
I just wondered if that 0.963 acres is large enough to place, and I can't remember the topography out there.
That would be the high side detention.
That's the high side?
Yeah.
Figures, okay.
So that wouldn't matter.
Yeah. So then, what I wanted to do is in essence be fair with the other schemes. So the scheme number 2 is what I would consider like a compressed scheme of like, let's pull this in and tighten it up, and absolutely without that portion in the northwest site, you could fit Charter Oak Elementary School on site, get the parking and make that work. The challenge becomes, as you'll see, is by the time you get roads, fire access, playgrounds, is that's basically boxing in the entire property from that side. So just, is it possible? Yes. As you get to the next diagram, which is kind of a Y shape, that is based off of a 2-story prototype that we built for a district in northwest Austin that some may be familiar with. But that is a prototype that is pre-K through 3 on the first floor and 4 or 5 on the second floor. And so that's the split. So it's not an even split, it's basically a 2/3, 1/3 split on that side. So it's got a little bit bigger floor plate on the first floor from there.
These last 4 schools that we built have been 792 to 800. Is that about the capacity for this one too?
Correct. So, I mean, we would target the same capacity. We're trying to keep them apples to apples across the board. So 800 students. So this one, you can already see that there's a lot more room in and around the building. This one you access, basically bus drop-off is in the back, parent drop-off is in the front. We'll work through that prototype design and that, but you'll see that there's more area that you can drop in playgrounds and that kind of stuff. So that 2-story does buy you something. And then the last one, diagram, which is on page 11, is a 2-story prototype scheme that is basically split 50-50. So you get pre-K through 2 on the first floor and 3 through 5 on the second floor. And it becomes the kind of, I'll say, educational argument of, do you want flexibility? Where do you want classrooms? How do you interact with the students if those decisions come in place? But you'll see on this one, because of, again, the reduced footprint, it provides more site, more availability on site on the scheme from there. So,
is there a thought in the educational world?
I was gonna ask the educational.
Yeah, I mean, you want
what's your
K3
preference
down
on
and 4 or
that?
5 up, or I mean, what's the thought process there? Does it matter?
I don't know that it necessarily matters. I would be curious to see in the inside of it, does having the more even split of K2 and 3-5 allow you to have common intervention rooms or different things on both floors, so that you don't have kids that need a special service or in a breakout having to go up and downstairs and lose that time? That would be my wonder.
So I know it's not y'all's architectural firm, but you know, Thornton Elementary in Temple is 2-story now, and it's beautiful. And I would be curious just to know how they're functioning with that space. It'd be worth a visit just for their
I
functionality.
so agree. They do special populations on both floors, because you got an elevator. And Jefferson, same thing. It's a 2-story building. But we do special programs on both floors, or did.
What about the one that y'all have?
So they have, it's a neighborhood concept school, and really very interesting design. Teachers love it. Most special programs are on the first floor, also elevators and stuff like that.
And that's the one that is K through 3 on bottom, 4 or 5 on top?
Correct.
What kind of capacity? Same?
800.
800?
Yeah.
And it is like, it works, it's functional.
Yeah, Leander's been building that similar footprint since about 2008 or 9, I believe.
We've done 9.
Yeah.
9 between the 2 firms.
Okay.
They just built their most recent one.
And that was the
in
one you
footprint.
stuck on the, okay,
yeah, so this is the Leander
Okay.
prototype.
good.
Okay.
It's nice because it maintains your outdoor space and play for
And I think you
students.
visited that school when we were looking at Charter Oak. We took y'all over there to visit one of them.
Yeah.
We
So-
visited.
Since we're losing, say, an acre to 2 acres, normally what we would have, let's say we were gonna be at 15 to 17, we're gonna be in the 14 no matter what we do. By going with that level, we are maintaining enough outdoor space?
Correct.
Because we're going up instead of out.
Correct.
We are gonna maintain enough space to do the,
It would work, we could make it work either way. I think it's then how much breathing room do you have, and I think as you look at Chisholm and those diagrams, like putting an addition somewhere becomes a challenge. We've already talked about where portables go become a
Right.
challenge because it's so tight. And I
Right.
think that's the future opportunity.
what's the footprint of Chisholm?
84,000.
I'm sorry, the acreage.
I don't
It was
know.
19, 18 or 19?
Yeah, it was quite a bit bigger
Yeah,
than.
it was 18, I think.
And some of that is the roadway, and you'll see in the aerial that there is space, but it's just not next to the building.
Okay.
So you're gonna have to
And it's
reroute.
kind of a swap on price, right? Because you're taking down the
So
the slab and.
the last little kind of 2 bullet points is generally 2 sides of one is when you reuse a prototype, you get a discount on the architectural fees because we're moving, so I tried to quantify that. And then the one after that is the idea of, in essence, when you stack 2 floors, you're only building 1 foundation. foundation,
Right.
one interstitial floor, and one roof, so there's a savings there. You are adding stairs and elevators, as noted.
You've got a little energy efficiency.
So we would lose, obviously, the architectural side for not repeating, but if that's such as it was in Leander, if that becomes a model that we use, we would pick it up in additional years if we rebuild that same school again. The
Absolutely.
2-story. Okay.
Chisholm's 15.6 acres.
15, okay.
Okay. So we're an acre smaller, basically.
So in the end, it's doable, and I think it'd be then the board's choice is, okay, the constraints are you'd probably want to go to 2-story, you may limit some future growth capacity, but ultimately, yes, you could do the swap of land.
So this is for your future discussions. This is not a discussion for tonight, or something you have to decide tonight, or tomorrow, or next month. But whenever, the reason this became important is because depending on what you wish to do with that developer, this conversation is germane. I'm not going to ask you tonight to approve the developer's request, because you got a lot of information tonight. I want you to take it back in the next month, because the transition will be complete, Dr. Smith will be here, and this needs to be his discussion with you. Then you ought to decide what you want to do, and you can let the developer know. But what you need to see tonight, and the questions last time were, is it feasible? Yes. And Jen, I think your idea of sometime in the next 2 months going and seeing some of those 2-story buildings is a great one.
Yeah, just to see what do teachers think of it, and how do the kids function in the space, you know, just stuff like that.
I tell you, Tim, I was at Thornton the other day. I don't think you even think of it being a 2-story building when you go in.
Right.
You know, it's just a school. I mean, you really just.
Yeah, not like the old
No, you just
boxes where you
No,
just look up.
you just don't think about it, it's just a school.
All right, so we good on this one?
Okay, so that will be next month. Matt, coming your way?
It does make me feel better, obviously, you know, that you've been around that campus, you're familiar with it, those type of things, you know. Plus, with the Southwest
Gives us an
idea, that's gonna probably be the footprint we need there, so that's a plus. Cause that's probably gonna be, you know, down the road, something to look at first before the north gate, I would say, based on what's going on south. So I think that's probably a good,
Opportunity.
yeah.
The other thing that I want to talk about with this packet that Jared just gave you is the First Baptist request.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how that affects the Second Avenue. Where's that easement?
So as I recall, the easement on this diagram is basically paralleling this top right line on the backside, behind the ag barn,
That's good.
What page is that?
Is that down by the creek?
next to the last page.
Yeah.
Yeah, the property line is actually the center of the creek.
That's right. Yeah, we walked it that day. Yeah, it's in the creek.
I did call Terry Covington yesterday and to let her know where these discussions were. And I told her that she would need to communicate with Dr. Smith at this juncture. But I told her I'm not pulling it forward right now. And she even said that partly because of transition, partly because I didn't feel like all of their paperwork was complete at that point in time. And she said that she will go back to, I guess, their architect and talk with them. There was some even changing in the wording. So there's really not a request on the table at this point in time for that easement. She talked about the school district could use that for future sewage for the school district. I mean, right now, we're taking care of on the Second Street. I don't know if that's particularly Benny for Belton ISD at this point in time. Certainly, if he would add a campus there. I didn't know that there was a footprint for putting a campus on Second Street property, and that's why I wanted to make sure that you saw that, because maybe you did. I did not.
I didn't know that till I saw this packet. I didn't know.
That's kind of what I thought, Ty. So you still have some of the same issues, even, you can put a school on that campus. That's an absolute piece of information you needed. You still got a big fat power line sitting down the middle of it, which is absolutely a concern. You still have road egress issues, which the city would have to be your partner in determining what you wish to do on that. And you still have a cliff on your northeast side of that, so you've got some safety and how you relay that on that property. So you still have some issues sitting there, but you can stick a campus on it. I mean, whether you do or not, that's gonna be your thought.
And this is the one that was already considered years ago. right?
Yeah, when we first got on the board, I remember some discussions that it was gonna cost like 1.6 million for the infrastructure from the city, you know, their part of it, I think some number kind of around there, and, you know, it wasn't gonna be very feasible for the city of Belton, and so it really, there was a lot of obstacles. And then when we went out and toured the ag barn several weeks ago, those kids are walking those animals all over that property, and it's gonna limit, you know, that, you know, and like I said, the cliff and all, and there's a lot of issues with that property to me, to put an elementary school.
Again, we'll come back to your quadrants. So when you think about southwest quadrant, this is one property in southwest quadrant, but you also have that Shanklin property, which I didn't know was a master plan for 2 campuses, actually.
It's 100 acres.
Yeah, it is.
108, yeah.
So, you do have some more property there. Now, your considerations for, and Matt and I were talking about this earlier, for your Shanklin property, secondary, I don't think there's any problem whatsoever. But you've got a jail across the street. And so elementary schools, that would need to be a consideration, because they do release people from that jail at times. And so you
All
do
day
have.
long.
All day long. They are traveling. You know that, David. 'cause
They're
you're
right across
home
the street
with
from
them.
us.
Same here.
So you do have to consider that, and again, talking about quadrant system, if you decide that isn't the best place for an elementary school, and you decide Second Street isn't the best place for an elementary school, then you are in the position of purchasing some property on that southwest quadrant.
Yep.
But we also talked about in that southwest quadrant, we have 2 smaller schools that you could use
True.
those properties to build a 2-story school in double capacity.
I haven't walked the
So
Miller
I
Heights
just want to remember,
property. We did one day, we were touring Southwest, we walked out there, and there's plenty of room up there. I
That's
haven't,
southeast.
yeah,
Miller's are southeast.
Yeah.
Southwest would be southwest, and then Leon Heights and
Oh,
Leon.
yeah.
Leon, I don't know that you can do, but southwest, you could
You could.
You
consider a
could do
2-story.
the 2-story.
You can do this, now you'd have to think about what to do, obviously, while that's under construction.
Well, actually, that was the idea. The
But-
2-story is the footprint. You could actually build it and keep Southwest open
Oh,
the
yes,
entire
that's
time.
correct, on that
And
property
then
you
raise that
can.
school after,
Yes.
after you're done.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
Todd's question is really germane, because y'all can go back now and work on a 2-story look for Southwest, and that will give you another option.
Well, maybe we already have.
and in an area where we really
Like,
like
have
to keep
to
it
have it
school.
forever,
Yeah.
because there are always gonna be kids in that area.
A lot of walkers in that area, a
Lot
lot,
of-
of lot of
yeah.
children that
And
walk.
it's a community.
That
thing, too.
neighborhood needs that school.
I agree.
And I'll say, 2-story building or not, if you're gonna rebuild on a piece of property, because we did this so many times in Temple, you can stage that construction where you can do pieces of that building and retain pieces of the building that are still open.
Yeah.
And then you put in a little gallery of portable buildings to pick up your access, but you can do that with an existing campus.
Awesome.
All of these original site assessments from Charter Oak Day are in the back of your big packet in more detail for, as Dr. Battershell said, when you're at home, kind of in your living room and you're
Coffee is free time,
reading.
yeah.
When you're dreaming of architecture.
Yeah.
But the nice part about this packet is you've got a one-stop shop for all of your future plans, basically here tonight. And so as you go through your next months, years, whatever else, you can keep referring back to this and you'll have your answers. Or maybe not answers, but you'll have the information that you need.
All right, so we're ready to go forward. So we're at D, Chisholm Trail Elementary capacity.
And I think we covered
Yeah,
that,
we covered it pretty much.
but we do want to talk about the extensions on the wings.
Yeah, so, and I want to kind of put a couple things in perspective as feeding decisions. Is back on page 11 of the packet. There is a schedule and cost there of a new elementary school, so just kind of keep that in the framework of, you know, what does that cost in comparison to, you know, fundamentally, you're looking at roughly 2 to 2.5 years to go through a design and construction process, and roughly about a $27 to $30 million project along that. The other part, and this is the, as you go to, I'll say page, it's the first of the packets for page 13, which is the December meeting. Out of this, and this is just the framework, we had presented this graph as we went through the planning, and basically every red dot, top row is elementary, middle row is middle school, and the bottom row is high school, of just what does this growth look like over the next 30 years? And it's coming to Belton, in essence, is what that says from there. And I think that's what y'all are experiencing and seeing from there. And then ultimately, the bond, this is the funding chart that was used during the bond planning process for the 23 cents and the $150 million. So as we look at Chisholm Trail, which, so if you go back then to page 7, starts with the blue chart in there. When we approach a discussion about capacity and adding capacity, I always want to look at what is the existing facility, how does it offer and support the campus community, how does that give response to the future growth within the district. So kind of running from the top to the bottom is Chisholm Trail was opened in 2014, it's 81,000 square feet. And when we talk about capacity, we not only look at classroom capacity, basically how many students can you put in the classrooms, that there are 36 classrooms, it's ready for 792 students. We also look then at core capacity, in essence, how many kids can you fit in the library, how many kids can you fit in the cafeteria, do you have adequate gym space? And so when you look into those numbers, I'll say in reverse of what could our cafeteria support, we roughly talk about 825 students in the cafeteria and 833 in the library. Based on TEA for the library and general planning principles. You might be able to squeeze some more kids in there than that, but from when we plan, those are the rules of thumb that we use. So that's what it is. As we look at what happens here in the future, current enrollment is 710 students from the demographic chart below. That was from Templeton Demographics. And then the 5-year projection is 930 students. And the reason I use the 5-year projection is when we talked about Belton 2025, which was what led into this bond program, that was kind of the milestone that was looking towards achieving. So I kind of kept that same yardstick. As you total this, I'll say between this demographic report and the original, that same time frame, you have 200 more elementary school students than what was projected. So the growth is increasing, is basically what that says at that point. So then as you get down to the bottom, the anticipated need, starting there, is we talked, it was mentioned a 6 classroom addition. That would be roughly about 6,500 square feet to get the corridors, restrooms, those kind of things. That would increase your classroom capacity by about 127 students. So you'd be looking at extending the classroom capacity to 919 students is what that would do. So that would be the 792 plus the 127. So it would facilitate, in essence, relating those two. You would roughly meet that 5-year projection that you could handle all those students, but then year 6, you would then be over capacity again from that standpoint.
But Jared, what does that do to your core capacity, because you're now exceeding your cafeteria, your gym, your music space?
So that would be the challenge. So it would potentially mean that your lunch durations have to get longer, that you're serving earlier and later to be able to just meet that need, or you're packing more kids in those spaces or finding alternative spaces, which that's the challenge.
And does that include concerns with like outdoor play areas as well?
We don't typically look at that. That is kind of handled in the play area of generally Charter Oak set the standard of having 3 playscapes. And so we would want to make sure that those
And Chisholm has a
Kids
lot.
want to have recess.
they do.
On the backside?
Yeah,
Yeah, they
there's a lot of.
There's a lot of room over there.
What is that property over there? How many acres is that?
16, when I say 16,
it's 15,
196. But you got all this area here
But you're
that you
exceeding
can
your,
extend the playground.
So
There's a neighbor across the
it is,
street that might
so
let
those,
you some of
right
that
now, those
property.
2 things don't.
you're
There's
exceeding
bees on that
your
property.
cafeteria
Take them up.
by 100 students. So then you gotta think about daily, I'm just voicing these, I know there's a concern, but voicing not only the lunch, but then I think about performances and.
So the option in this would be, this is kind of where it's getting the money, is right now, for example, in Charter Oak, well, Chisholm, as you walk into the cafeteria, there's that little notch in the corner of the
Yes.
building. Well, we pulled that into the building in Charter Oak. So, I mean, you could take those approaches to Chisholm of expand the cafeteria right there to buy a little bit more seating and floor area.
Okay.
The question would be is, do you need to expand the library and take over a classroom, which takes it from a 6 classroom edition to a 7 classroom edition? Those are the things, like, as you start pulling on this thread, the ball grows on
The
So-
that.
libraries can work it out easier than the cafeteria.
And that's part of the
I don't know where in this discussion, because it always comes down to the money. So, would we be able to say, for the 2022-23 year, are we gonna be in a position to be able to go to the public for another bond where we could do another elementary school rather than doing the Band-Aid approach at Chisholm?
So the sooner we decide to go out for a bond authorization, the less capacity we would have, because of the way that we've been growing and we've structured our debt in the past. So, of course, the longer you wait, the more debt capacity you're going to have, which means you can fit more projects into a bond issuance, but it's really based on district needs at the time. If our needs are such that we need an elementary and some renovations, and we really can look at a bond that's $100,000 or $100 million, then if we have that capacity, it would benefit us to do it as soon as possible. Because you have to factor in interest rates and those type things. Markets are volatile, construction costs, so the longer you wait, the more expensive the projects are going to get. So it's going to be really a balancing act. Would a year buy us really that much more? I don't know. We're gonna have to get with our financial advisor, get some cost estimates together. And I think we presented that probably about 2 or 3 months ago. But again, each day, things are changing, so we can definitely look at that again. But from what I recall, a year, maybe it didn't buy us as much, but 2 years bought us more, because we could work on structuring our tax rate so that we're building more debt capacity. However, it really depends on what projects we feel that we really need to get to.
You know, that's what I think about all the time, is that we've got a couple of bigger projects that really the clock's ticking. So, you know, swim center, some issues, you know, some athletic things, some big ticket items that are probably gonna, now the ag stuff, it came in more expensive than I was anticipating. Us when we walking around that evening, I didn't see $1 million there for what they were kind of looking at. So now we're kind of looking at needing to attach some of that stuff to a bond, and then knowing what we've got going on south. I mean, shouldn't we start really looking pretty hard at that?
I definitely suggest that. That's something we may not know. Right now we can't estimate just by the paper what our bond issuance could potentially be. All of us sitting in this room may think, oh, we only need 75 million, but when we start putting pen to paper, it may end up being 50 million, or it might end up being 150 million. But I will say that one of the things that we have to consider is that from our 2017 bond authorization, we do plan on having some money remaining out of that authorization. We are not exactly sure how much. Right now, we won't know until we get a little bit closer to finishing Lake Belton High School. But, that could be 2 to possibly 7, 10 million. I'm throwing numbers out there. Please don't put anything to
10 million, hold on, let me write that down.
But, but I don't want us to forget about those funds, because some of these projects that may only be a couple of million, we need to think about what we're going to do with those remaining.
And July is basically when, so we'll have an idea this summer. It's getting
you
pretty.
won't really know probably until September, October.
Yes, until close out.
I see. So
Yes.
we still have a little ways to go.
So what you've got right now is you need to close out this bond. I never would recommend someone doing overlapping bonds. I mean, politically, it's just suicide. And then the second part is you just really don't know until you close things out how much you're going to get done off of that bond. So finish it off. But in the meantime, you need to start thinking about, based upon your debt ceiling, right now we're at 38 point something cents.
39.63.
39.63. Okay, so
I could
you've
be
got
wrong.
about 11 cents, which isn't much on your INS capacity. If you can get that down to over time and increasing property values, and that's the other thing, is you've got a cap now on how much your property values can go up every year. So you're not gonna see these big jumps in your property values like we've seen before. So that's gonna really change. It'd be nice to see what a year is gonna behold on what we're gonna gain, because that's gonna be a huge change for all government entities. But you can go on and start putting in the queue the things that you think would be on a bond. And again, my suggestion for you, and y'all have been really successful with bonds, your community has been very supportive, I think that will continue. But you gotta weigh politically what your community is gonna support. you can't put everything on your south side, you know, you've got to distribute the wealth, literally the wealth. So on those quadrants, you know, what are you gonna do for the northeast side or northwest side, or what are there gonna be needs there? And so over the summer, with Dr. Smith, you can start putting together those pieces, prioritizing them, so that whenever there is some capacity, whenever you do close things out, then you're ready to go. You know what those things are in the queue, you know what those priorities are, and you know what those costs are.
I have a question for Matt. Y'all, how does the district of Leander avoid overlapping bonds?
So they, Leander had a bond in 2007, I believe, and then, of course, the recession hit, and that bond lasted a lot longer than they had anticipated because of some slower growth and stuff. Then we went out for a bond, I think it was November 2017, and so there was a 10-year gap there, so I can't really answer a whole lot about that. I will tell you this, is that during the recession, the board went through some things and reallocated some bond funds because of some changing needs due to the recession in Leander. And it did create some challenge with closing out some projects, so there were some lingering projects along the way. I think Dr. Battershell is absolutely right. I don't think overlapping bonds is a smart way to go. It would be good to close out the 2017 bond here in Belton and then really take a look at what we have.
Fascinating to me though, they put a school on the ground every year, so.
Yeah, but you're working off the same bond.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
they're not doing a bond for every school, they passed a
Correct.
big bond and they said, all right, we're gonna be able to build 7 schools with these bonds.
So our last,
We can't do that.
No. We don't have
But
that
if we
ability.
could, we would, but no, we can't.
the onesies and twosies.
Oh, yeah, y'all.
Wasn't
That's
it like
what
a half a
Chris
billion
is going to.
Yeah,
Oh
the last one was, I think, 454 million, 452, 454.
And people get hung up in that price tag, but that really isn't what matters. What's gonna cost the taxpayers matters.
That's right, and
Sensitive,
there's so
because
many there.
For $455 million, it may have cost them, per taxpayer, a whole lot less than
Right.
it cost the guys. I don't know, but I
Right.
mean, it could.
Fascinating.
So that's your layup.
So the 2 portables are gonna buy us a couple of years over there, and that's gonna help with coming up with that plan, closing out 2017, really taking a deep breath and then pushing forward on kind of that queue, that wish list, or not wish list, but the list that's coming down the pipe.
And like Dr. Battershell said, if we have a prioritized list, when we do figure out how much money we have remaining from the 2017 bond, we can go down that list, similar to what we did with the facilities improvement list, and tackle those items that's within our budget, as well as priority.
You'll get a lot done with that.
And I was surprised when I saw the price tag on the play equipment and the playground stuff, $4 million, that's a lot.
Yeah, but you don't know. I mean, you may be really pleasantly surprised, and I really don't know, and I don't think any of us do at this point in time. Robert would have a better idea than the rest of us, but, everybody looks at Robert. But you may have more than what you think at the end, and you might be able to make some pretty serious dents in those projects.
Good. And then we left ourselves a little room, you know, when we approved the 3.5 several months ago to start on the list that I love so much. But we still have a little bit of room with some in the general fund, that type of stuff.
Well, we're slowly but surely chipping away at the little room that we had, because but we did have a small amount of room still available in the capital projects, of which we took the baseball field lighting out of the contingency, because I think the projects total about 3.3 million, and we had a little bit,
3.5 we approved, wasn't it?
you all approved 3.5. So we had a little bit remaining, but, and I'm sure David can talk to this better, but some of the projects, you know, they're coming in a little bit under budget, some are a little bit over. So we are actually looking at that as well, because we do anticipate that we'll have maybe some funds left from some of those projects too that were on the facilities.
Well, speaking of the baseball lights, why did the coaches want to push it back? I would have thought.
Why
they
did
would-
coaches wanna push it back?
Because they were saying it was gonna take them 10 days, and they couldn't, with cranes out there, we were concerned about kids walking back and forth with cranes out there. They couldn't fit it in at the second part of spring break, they said they would need 10 days. And then that means they couldn't be practicing out there with the cranes out there for all 10 days. And we didn't have another place for them to practice. And they start district so early now with the 9-team district.
I'm ready to go.
Out ready to go.
So
So it's next year?
It'll come.
Summer, August 1st, is that, no, is it August 1st?
No, it's just soon as baseball season's over.
Baseball season's
Yeah.
over.
But they felt they couldn't lose 10 days of not being able to practice. And I understand, in the middle of the season.
Okay, so,
Some might get hit in the head.
so C, you've got the information that you need on those projects. D, you know, you're gonna add portables that will give you time to do some more long cleaning in the summer with Dr. Smith. And then on E, playground, Jared, I just kind of continue on your role here.
Yep. So, E on page 5, you'll see playground information on here. And so this started originally, I think, 2 to 3 years ago. And ultimately, the discussion was that we need to bring the playgrounds into compliance with the ADA. And I think not only ADA, but then also I'll say usability is that some of them have playgrounds, some have bark mulch, some of them have edging, some of them don't, all different states. And so we outlined, in essence, parallel with Charter Oak, is starting to set the standard of what that would be, of the playground equipment, the material, all those kind of things. We had the opportunity to tour the campuses, we had the opportunity to engage all the principals that time and get their input, and ultimately, what you'll see on this first sheet are examples of the playground equipment that would be selected, that in essence it's all called age appropriate for the 3 groups in elementary school. All of them requested it, either have swing or requested swings, but then principals, and you'll see, wanted more swings for everybody. Right now, there's basically one place at. And then the very bottom is, there's 2 elements here, and one of them is an option. The left 2 photographs are what do you do with a cover if you provide one. And I'll pair that with, if you look at the top right photo, that play equipment, and Charter Oak has an integral cover to that playground equipment. So that was kind of this in-between scenario for that one of not providing a dedicated cover. But often we see these canvas covers that are pictured in the bottom left, and the only challenge with those is that they do have a limited lifespan and that they become expensive. We had one in our kids' playground that just happened to be in reaching range of standing on top of the play equipment, and magically it developed a hole in it right above that. So you just have to be aware of those things. So I've often seen those where the cover's gone now and they just have the equipment. So it's this first cost versus replacement cost. So we are seeing some more of the kind of middle picture down there at the bottom, which is an aluminum canopy. So basically it's an aluminum walkway that's extra wide, extra long. In this case, they put it in there, and you'll see that they have a little bumper protection around the columns. So that would be another option. It does have a higher first cost. And then the bottom right photo then is the fall protection material that you see at Charter Oak. That is a fixed, it looks like bark mulch, it's actually a fixed product. Right. I know that many of you have walked on it. So when we got through this, and I think you mentioned is, this becomes the list of stuff, and it does have a heavy price tag at the bottom, so we started dividing it into, I'll say, bite-sized chunks. And so the first chunk of that actually is the accessible route, where you see there's now all zeros down that line because we were able to get accessible routes to all the existing play equipment at that point. And so then the next segment, in essence, the challenge with A and C are gonna have a correlation, is that you wouldn't wanna provide the new fall protection service with the old equipment. You'd wanna provide the equipment and the fall protection service. You could do equipment first, then the fall protection material, and just do bark mulch. Because when we talk bark mulch versus the other, you're talking about a 10 times factor. Bark mulch is like $1 a square foot, and the poured in place material is like $10 a square foot. Yeah, it goes up, it does. Well, and that's the fully installed cost, designed, all that kind of stuff with that. So in essence, that's the chunks that are left, and optional of whether or not you pursue those or not. So part A gets the remaining play equipment to bring everybody up to 3 playground equipment pieces per campus and 1 swing. You'll see the associated costs there. B becomes then the cover, and again, getting the right number of covers onto the campuses. And C becomes the fall protection material, and you'll see that then totaled by campus and totaled at the bottom. The couple requests then are swings at all the material with fall protection would add $1 million if you provided 3 swings at every campuses or 3 sets of swings. And then a lot of people wanted soccer goals or backstops added to the campuses, so we identified that add for those campuses. And you'll see some generalities of the equipment. All these numbers are based on Charter Oak Elementary School and pulling those standards forward. So play equipment is not cheap, to say the least.
Okay, we'll give you something to shoot at. All right, you ready?
And with all the safety stuff, it's a wonder that any of us survived our safety, or our playgrounds growing up, yes.
Or those things that turn around and you can get on them and just fly off.
So wonder any of us lived through
The
all
tether
that.
balls, those great days.
So Jared, what is the ratio of sidewalk to playground areas?
What do you mean by ratio?
So, I've heard that if you have a set of swings, you don't necessarily have to have an accessible route to those swings.
You're
You
supposed
should.
to, yes.
That's what I feel.
You should
I'm
have
getting
one.
a little pushback from that. So Jennifer, you may have to help me with this, or Deanna. I get a lot of requests from campuses, hey, the PTA wants to buy some swing sets. I tell them, gotta talk to purchasing first. You know, you can't just go out and buy something. I think we need to somehow communicate that district-wide. Don't do anything right now until
I've
we
done that.
implement.
Yes.
You've done that? Well, I'll let you know when I get this request, the ones that
Call 'em up. Yeah.
did not read the email.
Well, what we told, we've asked them to hold until we can address a master plan, that we are working on it. And so our PTAs are working hard because they want these things, they want better playgrounds, and they're raising money. But it's more expensive than what you know, so you can, you know, as a consumer, I could just go buy a playground and it's not costing me
Right.
$59,000.
Right.
And so, we've asked them to just hold.
I think there's
Okay.
a philosophy that comes into play, and y'all can disagree, but I think there's some things that we owe our kids. I'll be point blank, and I think to have decent playground equipment is one of them.
Mhm.
I think there are things that PTA should do, and they should do enrichment types of things, but to do what, there's really something that's basic to a child's education, I think that's the district's responsibility. And I'll go back to computers, there's another one, we've been talking about technology a lot lately. That kids have a functioning computer, if you're going to use computers in school district, I think that's the school district's function, I don't think PTOs and PTAs or whatever else should all be buying this and that, because we haven't done that piece of it. So I'm gonna tell you, the playgrounds is a big item for the elementary schools. It's really important, and it's been on the docket for a long time.
Mhm.
But I know that we have limited funds, so Jennifer has been a part of every step of the recommendation we're gonna give you tonight, and you can choose to do what you wish with it. So now I'm gonna give you something to shoot at. You ready? All right, take your sheet. What we would like to do is on part A is to finish that off. So you've got $684,000 price tag. So part A would be complete. Correct me if I say anything that's not part of what we discussed, Jennifer. Underneath part B, we can't afford all of that, we get it. But it would be nice to be able to provide at least one cover for every campus. One additional cover, I think they've got maybe one. And I asked Jared if those covers could cover existing playground equipment, which would put something under cover. And he said yes, they could, so that was important, that's important.
So they're basically $42,000 a piece?
Yes, sir, that's correct. And I'll give you the math in a minute, because I multiplied it out. Because I had a price tag that Jennifer gave me that I had to hit. The other one, the other one, I mean, it was uncanny how it happened in the end, but anyway, is we picked up, so that would give them, again, each another cover, and then underneath all that, you see swings at each playscape with the fall material would be 2 additional ones per campus, so that would give them another playscape that has places for kids to fall for that $954,000. We feel like that's another important piece. So if I add up $684,000 from part A, just go to calculator.
462 on part B.
That's correct. And the $954 from the bottom, I get $2.1 million, and that was the price tag that I was given by Ms. Lane.
How much was that, I'm sorry?
2.1.
She was reading ahead.
We're talking a little bit.
We felt that
But I mean,
it's
truly-
installing metal slide on the rocks.
On the slab,
So-
you touched it, the Texas heat, you got
So based on the recommendation, does that mean we have that money?
That is the money. We had a conversation with Jared, actually, and based on our conversation, I looked at what we still have remaining in our contingency funds, and set aside 2.1 million as a target.
And she didn't even know the number I had come up with until we compared notes, and it was 2.1.
Wow.
Wow.
That's.
Is this using
How
the
much?
synthetic fall protection or using the mulch fall protection
This is a synthetic.
that we have?
With the swings.
With the swings, yes, but not the playground equipment.
Correct, that is correct, that's correct.
Yeah, just at the swings right now. Okay.
As part of that 900, I took off my glasses, as part of that 954,000, yeah. That was a whole lot.
So, obviously, I remember in last meeting or the meeting before, we were looking at projects down the road, and Deanna said how important this was, so she put it at the top of her list.
It
So
is at the top.
I have, I think this is a big deal, something that we definitely need to look at. So we could make a recommendation at this point to the board, is that what we're asking for?
Yes, that is what
To
we.
do a 2.1 and then we'll have y'all break it out to show them what we're gonna do with that?
Yes, and I will have to do a budget amendment, a transfer to our
Mhm.
capital projects fund.
Like we
with
did on the
this
3.5?
2.1 million.
Yeah.
I agree with what Dr. Battershell said. I do think we owe it to our kids. This is their favorite part of the day. I mean, you ask kids recess and getting to play outside.
Oh, is that it?
We have excellent teachers with wonderful curriculum. They still love recess.
And
So,
I think about the timing of this, with Dr. Smith's first meeting, this is a great way for him to come in.
I love the planning y'all have done on this one, this is great.
thank you for making this happen.
Well, I'm in.
Awesome.
I'm in.
Well, Jennifer says if we can, we can.
So
Jennifer,
Jared,
we
what
trust.
needs to happen first?
We trust.
Approval from the board.
Well, I mean, after that.
So we would need to then go and look at the campuses and start identifying where the playgrounds go, where the swings would go, and kind of start working through that. We'd need to determine, like for the swing equipment, I think we'll have to evaluate whether we need new survey information. But like the ADA routes for those flat schools, I think we can just work it out with the contractor again and identify, here's a bid package to go out, that would be bid at that point.
Yeah, and I'm all for just putting this all in one package, all these schools, instead of,
10 different ones.
Yeah, on one contractor, you can do it all.
Oh, yeah.
The approval would be to identify a method, so is it what is it called, delivery method? A procurement delivery method.
Right.
To move forward with basically getting the bids and the quotes and then identifying what the
The
cost
only
is.
thing I would say, I don't know why, just in the back of my mind, I just keep thinking about that southwest side in the near future. Make sure that we're not putting something,
We're going to tear it down later.
Yeah.
right,
looking at
Oh,
that.
that's funny, I was thinking that same thing.
Yeah.
If they're gonna get one, if it's approved, they get one playground. You don't want it, you want it strategically placed.
Yeah, we want
And I think we can talk about that strategy and
Start
going through
getting
the
that.
mindset.
thing put in there and then seeing what the future's gonna look like, yeah.
I think out of anything that you have done, this will probably be the most visible.
Good,
Mhm.
let's do it.
This will make a lot of people happy.
Yeah, I'm in.
I like doing that.
A lot of those kids happy.
Okay, so are we good on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Good.
Sam,
More stuff.
All right, so here we go. I just wanna say real quick, about 3 Fridays ago, my boss let me off work early one afternoon, and I didn't have anywhere to go, and I ended up at the field house. And Coach Skidmore gave me 2 hours of his afternoon, and we walked facilities and looking at some of these things. And I just wanna say how awesome it is to be able to do that, and for them to be able to carve that time out. Because now when I drive around town, I look at facilities, I don't know why, now I do that. I think about it all the time. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, my
That was a
pleasure.
good afternoon.
So I'm giving y'all 2 sheets. One is just a summary, so y'all follow year by year, and then long-term range planning. I did a comprehensive look at our athletic facilities. Year 1, one of the projects that needs to be addressed down the road hopefully is the BHS gym. I don't know if y'all have ever been down in that hallway where all the locker rooms are, but it is a very confined space and tank, and with Lake Belton coming on board with, how nice that's gonna be. I thought some priorities would be, I attached some pictures in there. Some priorities would be, you know, new wall padding, paint, a simple paint job in the gym. The floor is great, the stands are great, they're in great shape, but a paint job in the gym, just a bright white, uniform the colors. It's been painted over here and there, and there's some mismatching colors. But a bright white, we did that when I was at Brownwood. We painted the gym bright white, and it really lit up the entire room. A simple thing like that. Do some graphic wraps on the doors, because if you see one page, the doors are actually kind of a different wood color, and that's the first thing people see. And we use that for cheer, we use that for Magic Bells. I mean, that is a comprehensive Belton High School facility. There's some tile work needs to be done. You can see, I got the janitor in the picture, but adding a door where we store the chairs and we store the scorer's table, and just some updates in there. The next project will be the locker rooms. We finally this year, thanks to Jennifer and this committee, approved our lockers above allocation request for actually getting us lockers in the varsity boys locker room. They never had actual lockers. They had hooks in there, but all the other lockers are not in good shape in there, or the girls' locker room. So just painting the locker rooms, replacing ceiling tiles as needed, new bathroom fixtures, wrap locker room doors with graphics, simple thing, and paint the hallway. And so those were some updates in the gym area, just to make it comparable with simple things to make it nice, because it is a nice facility. It just needs a few updates. The current auditorium, with us adding a new high school coach next year, if you can see on the picture, that is the coach's platform on cinder blocks where we time meets, and our lifeguard station right there. So another need would be just make a sturdy structure for our high school coaches to have a place to work. Oh, which one? Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And a timing station for that.
Sam,
Yeah.
other than football, we've got 300 plus kids in football, right?
This year we had 340.
340, all right. Other than that, is there anything else even close in swimming to the amount of people that we affect on a yearly basis?
Not when you factor in, we own the club team. Ken Davies has started a mom and tot swim program, so it's our first month of that. We're facing a mom and tot swim program during the day. We have senior swim that comes in there. We have sunrise swim at 5 a.m. with seniors in there swimming. We have open swim. We're actually letting Temple High School use the pool in the morning because their auditorium's under construction. They have nowhere to swim because UHB wouldn't allow them to swim there. Yeah, so they'll be on campus here soon. Then we also have, we're gonna do pre-K swim, and as we grow, the need for swim and Tiger Shark programs over at I think 115 swimmers right now, and that's just gonna continue to grow. And we have the capacity, and we hired a really good club coach that the parents like. So, and down range and auditorium wise, which is on the long range planning, is, you know, I expect our Tiger Shark program to get to where we're gonna have to turn kids away at some point if we run out of swim. We're gonna have the Cat Middle School swim starting next year.
We're already doing the tryouts for middle school.
Our swim program, it's not only benefiting Belton ISD, but it's a community outreach. I mean, speaking as a mom of a young child, and in the summer, and you're wanting your kid in swim lessons, you're coming to our program, and you're putting them in the Tiger Shark program, and it's a community initiative as well.
It is. Let me throw one thing in that you may not even be aware of. So the other day, we noticed 3 of the laps on the swim center roof are separated. South wind just blowing just right, they're just flopping. Of course, you know, you can't structurally walk on that roof, so we're trying to find someone with an articulating lift that can get up there and make a temporary repair.
And we did a great job. We're supposed to install the filters here pretty soon. Those have been ordered. The UV lights, it's gonna eliminate some of the amount of chlorine that's in the air in there, but it's a bubble, so there's gonna be condensation problems all the time. When there's condensation problems, you're gonna have mold that we're constantly dealing with. You're gonna have the pH of the pool is always gonna be in flux. Right now we have a CO2 problem that we're working on trying to get apart. If not, we might have to shut down the pool for a couple days. It's just a constant thing right there, because you can't really control the environment when it's humid outside, no matter how much you do with the HVAC system, because it's a bubble.
So whenever we have to do construction on our natatorium, are we gonna need to go to Temple ISD?
Well, that's also the reason why when they asked me to help them out, because UMHB, I said absolutely, because we might have to. But to me, long-term range planning is, to me, we need a 50-meter natatorium, because we're going to be at 3 high schools at some point, and we don't have to revisit. Now we're out of pool space again. And with having a 50-meter natatorium, and I'm jumping ahead, is there's no 50-meter pools in this area we can host. Club meets all summer long, which is revenue and people coming into our area and eating meals and staying in hotels. We can possibly host a regional meet, which now we have to go, Austin has to go all the way up to Mansfield every time, which we are a central location for those sorts of things.
So, and you talked about how getting people on and off campus because security, there's so many people coming and going. It would be best to look at an off-campus facility for this project. And something else too I've been thinking about down the road, we've talked about the transportation department in that area, how it's, man, it's really cramped down there. I wonder if that Northgate facility would, because we're gonna have such a small area there, if it would be a good spot to look at a natatorium / transportation, how many acres you would need for something like that facility in the future, if that's something to, I'm just throwing that out there, just spitballing.
So,
Well, bottom line is with the natatorium, we know that's going to be a bond item. With it. So as you start talking about your bond items and laying those up, that needs to be reduced. Okay, go ahead.
and just on your safety issue, just because we open up the community and we have community people coming in there, there's people coming on campus all day long, and then trying to get middle school parents to pick up their middle school kids when school's letting out and you can't get back there to 4:45, it's just a real headache, so. Also in year 1, the auxiliary weight room. We did a great job, you know, me and Coach Morgan met a couple years ago just with Lake Belton coming on the horizon, and Coach Morgan spearheaded this of trying to find projects to do to prepare. Because we weren't going to have the 9 anymore, because 9 was going to be in BMS, and we did a great job. We created the Bronco locker room. They've been, those guys did a great job on the field house renovation for baseball, softball. We created an auxiliary weight room, but we still don't have the solid flooring all the way throughout there comparable to everybody else. So that'd be another thing moving forward. I know since I've been here on the docket, it's been on year 2 would be adding tennis courts 9 and 10, because Belton High School currently only has 8 tennis courts. I went ahead and superimposed that one in there for you.
No, I think we,
It's been on the list.
no, I thought we took care of that with the new school. We added enough tennis courts at the new high school to give us the capacity we needed.
So they have 10, but Belton High School doesn't. They still have 8. And Belton High School would like to have 10 for multiple reasons. Number one, you know, they can.
Oh, no, I remember that. I just thought that I thought we added the additional tennis courts to the new high school to make up for that capacity so we could host the tournaments and all that. Was that?
So 8's the minimum for UIL.
Right.
And then the discussion was originally putting tennis courts at the middle school level, and ultimately it's decided that wasn't a good strategy for staffing and coaching, so it was to maintain middle schools coming to the high schools. So the question would be is, do you have enough participation at the middle school level that you're gonna bring over capacity the 18 tennis courts that are there, because you have high school, boys, girls, multiple teams. And
we did do 10 as a new one though.
That's correct.
To be able to
select that alternate.
Okay.
And right now we contract with UMHB. South Belton goes to UMHB.
Right.
And we pay them a fee for them to practice at UMHB in the mornings. I think it's $34,000 a year. So tennis courts 9 and 10. We also, you know, we're supposed to resurface tennis courts every 5 to 6 years. We've been holding off on that because of the next 2 tennis courts. And so they also need to be resurfaced at some point. Like I said, we held off. We've been holding off on that, thinking, you know, because there's been discussion about tennis courts 9 and 10, but those do need to be resurfaced, and new windscreens at the tennis court. Baseball, softball, new netting. It's that life cycle in it. Baseball, softball, new netting. Adding athletic complex parking. If you've ever been to the athletic complex when there's a softball game, a track meet, tennis going on, they wind up parking down the street when school's letting out. It's a bad situation. So
where would we add that?
So I kind of just spitballed on the tennis court picture with adding 9 and 10. I went ahead and extended the parking lot just on Photoshop.
Is that something that you can do on
Oh, I
the
see,
city
into that
building?
grass area, I see what you did.
Into the grass. Okay, so that grass area, because I know we don't own that park, that HEB Pavilion Park. That's owned by the city. That's Chisholm Trail Park, whatever it's called. But that big grass area,
Big open field.
that big open field, that is our property.
Okay.
then. Okay.
I don't know.
Oh, I don't know either. That's why I was asking.
No, it's
No,
not.
That's not our property then. The city.
That belongs to the city.
It doesn't matter,
Okay.
because you both need parking. City
Correct.
needs it, you need it.
Yeah.
So do something together,
Okay.
split the cost.
Because that's just land. I mean, it gets used, but that's just. Somebody asked me the other day, so, well, do we need to contact the school about practicing there? I was like, God, I'm pretty sure that doesn't belong to the school. I said, just go out there and practice till someone tells you no.
Old BHS field house, we're in the process of, David and those guys of gutting it to create BMS's weight room right now. I would like to look forward, on a district indoor golf hitting bays, cause right now, anytime it's wet, our kids can't practice. And you'd be surprised at the amount of phone calls I get from upset parents, cause they're having to cancel practice all the time, so.
So is that gonna be a joint facility?
Yes.
So both schools can use it?
We have room in that building, that building's quite extensive, even after we put the weight room in and leaving a mat area, just in case, and leaving some areas in there in case one day people wanna pursue wrestling, we'll have an area to have wrestling, but we'd still have room for the indoor golf hitting bays.
The bays aren't expensive. It's just the technology if they want that.
Well, I don't think we need the technology, as long as they have a place where they can play, and they can hit, and they can watch them, just.
Okay.
On a wet spring, you know how many days they lose going out to practice.
That floor breaks right.
Mine's going all over the place. Year 3 district football field resurface, because the Broncos will be playing over there. It was last resurfaced in 2015.
So during that JV 2-year hiatus, they're gonna be playing on their campus. Yeah.
And then also rebranding the scoreboard with that. You know, it says Belton Tigers and some different rebranding things that need to come down the road. Long range, new off-site natatorium, 50 meters. You know, talking to different people, like I said, if we had a diving area in 50 meters, you know, none of our schools in our district dive, because there's no place to dive. And the 50 meters can be split up into 2 separate pools with a deck, the way they do it. And so it'll allow us for growth as we grow with possibly the 3rd high school down the road, still being able to meet capacity for the amount of swimmers in the pool. Tiger Field, down the road, if it's being the district athletic complex for football, update the fencing around Tiger Field. A press box, we are doing some renovations, but that press box is 9.5 feet wide. That's the limit of it. So basically, I could stand, touch one wall, and I'm almost touching the other wall, and that's the limit of it.
We're good.
Didn't we already talk about that one now?
Yeah, that's already on the list.
It's already
I thought we
on.
already approved that.
We're doing renovations in there, but the fact of the
Yeah,
actual
eventually we know
space,
it's
you
gonna
can
have
only
to
do so
completely
much.
We're doing 40,000 Band-Aid on it. Start now, right quick.
Yeah. As soon
As
as
soon
track's over.
as soon as Saturday's over,
Yeah.
big
Track-
red relays.
track meet,
Gotta keep on going.
Sam's still holding up along the project.
Update concessions, make 2 concessions on home side. Right now we have 1 concession and they all got the funnel to 1. Locker rooms for LBHS and visiting team, we did create a locker room, but it becomes a security issue every time that Lake Belton and the visiting team have to exit the fences to go to the locker room before game, halftime, after game. They're interacting with parents and it's a security issue. And then update home side of bleachers. The other option would be an offset district stadium with an auditorium as other districts have done. LBMS, they adding a junior high stadium with track or just a track, and replace the auxiliary metal gym. And then BMS add a track or junior high stadium, because currently we only have 2 of our middle schools have stadiums and tracks. The rest have a concrete track.
All right. So, moving forward, the list.
Yes, so, before we turn to the list, let me, just update you on a couple of things that are actually on the list. So I think Sam mentioned, we have, delayed the softball lighting. The lighting fixtures themselves will have to be delivered, on the 26th. We're gonna put them in Connex until we are able to put those up. And, coming up, spring break, we're gonna be focusing on this security vestibule out here in the administration building. And I think we've got that all pretty well coordinated. There will be a little bit left to be done when you return from spring break, but for the most part, it'll be functional. Old baseball field house. So we have started the demo. We're opening that thing up and finding a lot of little surprises here and there, but we're dealing with them. We've got the new lights installed in what will be the weight room. And Janet, we have all those old restrooms, they no longer exist.
I'm so glad.
They're
It's traumatizing.
They were gone. It was traumatizing when we demoed them too.
I don't think that picture was supposed to go on that board.
But those are gone, and we're actually gonna create a unisex bathroom there for the weight room activity. And then we'll have places, as Sam said, for a mat room. And then future expansion. That's actually a pretty big building, and we're demoing a lot of that old millwork, just sort of gutting it and getting it out, so whenever we decide what we wanna do in there, we can do that. On the HVAC gym projects for the elementary school, so the units are here for all three campuses. Concrete slabs are poured. The ductwork's being fabricated. We're gonna set those units, hopefully, we're going to this week, but we're definitely gonna do it Monday with the weather breaks. We'll set all those units on the pads, and during spring break, we'll install the ductwork, and then Phil will start on the electrical. I'm shooting for April 13th completion. Having AC running. So,
Are we still on budget on those two?
under budget.
Under budget.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I don't like to say that, but we're gonna take the money away.
Music to my ears.
Use it to, we can use it for something.
Please say, we'll do it.
So, if you remember last month, we left here and went to the ag facility. So there were some requests for a hog barn and a poultry barn. So I reached out and got some sketches, pretty rough sketches, but it was enough to give us some budgets to, and what the requirements were. So they gave me that feedback. So visualize the existing ag barn at 6,600 square feet. The hog barn is gonna be 6,325 feet, so it's almost the same size building.
Right.
I've walked that site. The topo, really the best fit would be to sort of put it on the end of the existing ag barn, going toward the creek. You got plenty of room out there, and a buffer between where the fencing is, the safety fencing. So we could put it there. I don't think putting it down in that lower section is a good idea for a lot of reasons. For the sewer system, and I'm afraid we'd get water in there with a real big, heavy downpour. So that price came in at, for the hog barn, $731,000. And it's pretty much in line with what we paid for the ag barn originally.
Square foot wise, yeah.
Yeah. And then the poultry, and I'll be honest with you, there's still some things to be worked out here. It came in, it's basically an 85 by 50 enclosed metal building, $351,000. You'd think that's a lot of money, but we've got to visit with those folks, because he's telling me when the chickens are hatching, he's got to maintain 90 degrees.
5 degrees.
You do?
And I'm like, how are we gonna maintain 90 degrees in the winter?
Well, they do it. I mean, but yeah, you're right.
So I have probably overestimated some things to keep those chickens warm, but I mean, maybe the thing to do is everybody take turns with a hairdryer, like chicken, just keep
Everybody
them.
hold some chickens.
Yeah.
Everybody hold chickens.
Well, I told the guy, I think he thought I was being a jerk, but I said, well, I thought that was the mama chicken's responsibility to keep the thing warm. But anyway, that's probably a bond item at that cost.
Yeah.
Unless we were to downsize it, and that's certainly up for discussion. Another project that we need to discuss tonight, and I think we're gonna go to the health science building. So Deanna has given us an idea of what she would like to do for the SPED offices in there. The building's actually in pretty good shape. However, there are two elements, which is probably half of the total cost, is the parking lot and the HVAC unit needs to be replaced. Those two items alone are, like I said, half of the cost. So right now, we're looking at $105,000 to build that out. I think, Jennifer, that in our original 3.5, I'm gonna have enough money. So I'm okay with moving that into this list.
Where are we, David? I'm sorry. I was making notes.
The SPED offices.
Oh, you're talking about the 6-3.
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
So my budget's about $105,000.
okay.
That's your budget for the.
For the build out. Yeah.
So no one's there now. There were health science kids there up until this school year, and we stopped having classes there because we were adding additional transportation costs, having the cost to meet the high school kids. The thought is right now, with the growing district, our departments are also growing. And we know that long-term future bond plans are looking at campuses to take care of kids. And so how can we use other facilities to take care of departments and never ask for, not be asking for an admin building or something like that. And we have folks in this building that are currently doubled and tripled up. And so that facility, while not really a great use for students in classes anymore, is a great use for our department needs. The biggest expense, like David said, would be the parking lot. But I would also point out that we use Wilson Kersey for our soccer, and any parking lot renovations would also help with parking for Wilson Kersey, because people park there for that. And there's a spot David and I looked at that's a green patch with some fencing around it. We could even look at expanding some of that parking, save on long-term maintenance costs for the grounds, and yet add to parking for Wilson Kersey.
David, that 105 does not include redoing those parking lots.
It does.
Oh, it does include this, okay.
This is in-house. Yeah.
David looked at we're looking at minimal renovations over there, so there's kind of 3 quadrants of that building. The first quadrant would be where we would add some single serve offices for some directors and coordinators, and then in the next 2 quadrants we would go more to like kind of like we've done with our staff on our buildings, and like that think tank where we would have cubicles and you could put multiple people in.
And because this is in-house, it probably would not, any particular item would not exceed the 50,000 mark, so that's something that we would just do.
The parking lot would.
The parking lot would, so that one would need to go to the board at the March board meeting.
So what we usually do for these large renovations, like you did with the administration renovation over for HR, we usually just take the item itself as an expenditure over 50.
All right, so they'll need to go in March.
Okay.
I've got a question on the ag deal. They have expressed interest in doing a garden, up there.
They're already working on that.
Are they already going on that?
Yeah.
So they've got money to take care of that?
We got the dirt donated, and then it'll just get formed up. It's not, it's an easy thing to do.
So they're good.
Yeah.
And then when I was in the PAC the other day for a program, the lights flickered the whole time I was in there.
Yes, so we changed those lights out. So there is actually a program between the soundboard and those lights, and they're working on it. I don't ask me all the details, I don't know.
Okay.
Wouldn't about to
Just wanted
tell you what it is, but they're aware of it and they're working on
It was a lot brighter, better.
it. It's a lot brighter,
It
yeah,
was
it's a lot
like a
brighter,
strobe light.
yeah.
Okay, so we've got, a recommendation for the 105,000, if that's okay with you guys, and that will go on the March, okay. And then, did y'all do while I was out of the room, on the old gym? Did y'all talk
No.
about that at all?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jared, would you pick up, that's on page 20? Can you do that one, please?
Yep, and on the packet I handed out, I did add some photos to there just as a visual. So this is an item that has been on the list since, I think, 2015, at that point, in essence, what to do with the building and what's the opportunities. And so this has always stayed as a demolish the building and replace it with something. And so right now, the challenge is there is abatement that will have to occur within the building before demolition, and then take the building down from there. And at that time, Head Start was located in those classrooms, and the decision was to move them out, vacated, and then the project didn't move forward at that point. So now, we've been asked to look at it again, and I'll say two parts. One is, there's a number here just to remove the building, and then there's kind of two adds right below that. In essence, one to come back with what I'm calling select fill, just to give it some sort of base, and then some gravel on top of that to just kind of even it out. So you could leave it as a blank canvas for the future, you could use it as parking in the interim, some version of that. And then a line to then go to asphalt parking, so if you wanted to turn that into an actual parking lot from that route. Lighting isn't that there. At the last meeting, there was discussion, and you'll see in the photograph in the top right, there's a little black line that kind of divides the building there. In essence, everything north of that line is the warehouse facility. Everything south of that line is currently used as classroom space for New Tech. And so the question was, could we basically selectively demolish the north half of the building and maintain the south half of the building? And the simple answer is, yes, it can be done. It would be extremely tricky, and I would generally not recommend it from that. And part of what you see is in the bottom photograph, and just kind of, so you can kind of understand it as we walk, we can talk through it all. The picture on the far left is inside the warehouse facility looking, and you'll notice that there's brick or CMU pilasters that run up, that's actually supporting the high roof of the gym. And as you go to the right, you have the lower volume, and this is actually the picture above ceiling there in the middle. So that wall dividing the gym is actually structurally supporting the classroom side and the gym side. My concern as we get into this is you start pulling that off, that will add structural complication and ultimately cost, and we will have to provide an exterior finish on that. I would guess you're probably gonna spend $250,000 putting a new face on that and dealing with just those structural issues without the cost of the demolition. So you're gonna invest a lot of money in maintaining those, I think it's 6 or 8 classrooms there in that space, if you chose to remove the gym. And we would have to go through and verify, because there is actually a crawl space underneath the building. There's other things that we would have to evaluate if the board wants to get serious about basically demolishing that gym and maintaining those existing classrooms.
And the other thing to keep in mind, the old Head Start space, that narrow section of that building is not ADA accessible at all.
And
So,
When we get in there for messing with it, do we have to bring it up to compliance?
well, I think that's what Jared's saying, if you're gonna demo the surplus, just demo the whole structure.
Yeah.
We'll find a place, Dr. Battershell and I talked about the old paint shop, which it does have asbestos, unfortunately.
Of course.
That old paint shop needs to go away.
Isn't that about 7,000 square feet, what is that?
Somewhere in there,
Yeah.
neighborhood, yeah. But because there's 3 different floor levels, it's just not functional. So you could clean that lot off, and you could put a portable classroom there with overflow for New Tech.
So again, this is one of those items for tonight, we're not ready for decisions. You're gonna walk them tonight, you're gonna see all this stuff, Matt needs to see it tonight. And then you're going to come back to these conversations, because they are more complex than just a building. But I will say this, regardless of your decision, there does not need to be people in those buildings, because they are hot. And it's just not the best setting for people to go. So that affects you guys, because y'all,
Yes.
we've done
It's
some
our
things
warehouse.
That's right.
It's our warehouse,
That's
so
right.
keep that in mind. Right now we don't have enough warehouse space.
Yeah.
So we utilize the old gym as warehouse, and you will see that.
I just, you made the comment, it's been on the list since 2015. I think when we start looking at it, there's a reason why it's been on the list for so long. Because I can think of so many other places we can spend that $1.3 million that has something to do with kids,
Yeah.
and not this. This has just never been one of my favorite things since I've been on the board for 3 years.
So you've got lots wrapped up into it. And warehouse space has become an issue, because we've kind of used our space, or we've gotten rid of spaces.
Right.
So, but you have to set places to put stuff. So you've got that. You need some more space at New Tech, that is a given at this point in time. DAP is gonna need some more space.
Yes, they are.
Absolutely, and then you've got some really old buildings out here that people don't need to be in, we don't need to store stuff, so you've got kind of 5 issues rolled into one.
Let's do it.
Okay, y'all ready for a tour?
Real quick, Southwest
Yes.
plumbing issue, where are we at?
Let's go.
Well,
No.
thought it quit stinking again.
It didn't
Well-
stink last week, cause I was there.
It was or was not?
I thought, well, I knew that we
Didn't
tried the
stink last
ventilation and that,
I mean, we've done everything we know to do.
It was fun.
did we have a commercial plumber look at it? I thought that was,
Yeah, I mean,
oh, what did they say? Nothing, they couldn't see anything?
we
or-
put some little, trap, those little two-way valves you put in the traps and floor drains, put those in. But we had them in 4 years ago, and the custodian folks removed them for whatever reason, I don't know, but.
So that plus the little vent thing we put, has solved it?
There were no smells outside, inside, or in the-
Alright.
I think,
Oh,
I love how David then it's just like, yeah, we fixed that.
All over again.
I've got so many things to fix, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that's just. One of a million.
So we just closed the meeting over there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanna go to the gym.